the more we will have the opportunity to select what is just critical to the process, and we can go to the efficient testing manner. So the more we have knowledge, the more we can reduce testing. And the more we have knowledge, the more we are flexible with our process, and we can avoid strict process implementation, because as long as the manufacturer knows what is important and what is critical to the final product quality, he can deal with the variation sources and unexpected events. So going through the process validation stages, product life cycle approach, the new stages are 3. Stage 1, which is relevant to the process design. In this stage, the main goal is that the commercial process is defined based on knowledge gained through development and scale-up activity. So the manufacturer do a lot of studies and a lot of pre-qualification trials to cover all activities related to the product research and development, formulation, pilot batches. All these are intended to accumulate knowledge about the process behavior and about the impact of variation sources to understand the process. This knowledge is used in the subsequent stage 2 process qualification. And the goal of this stage is to evaluate, assess, confirm, and demonstrate that the process is capable of reproducible commercial manufacture. So we here are building the assurance and ensure the process capability. In this stage, we have a very comprehensive sampling and testing and data accumulation, which increase the knowledge and grow up the knowledge that can be used further in stage 3, continued process verification, which is the ongoing assurance during routine production that the process remain in a state of control. So it's an ongoing process, starts from the development, it's implemented during tech transfer activities, during commercial production, even during product discontinuation. It never ends. It is continuous as long as the product is run. And regulatory expectation during each stage is to build the quality inside the product. So starting from the process design, stage 1, it should have a full process characterization using the quality by design principles, using the quality risk management principles to determine the manufacturing condition, establish the quality metrics, the testing regime at laboratory, at pilot scale manufacturing, and even at the planned activity in the manufacturing scale. This is based on the quality target product profile and based on the critical quality attribute determined for the product. And then it is expected that the manufacturer will perform a factorial analysis to determine variability, which is critical to the product, and to determine what are the most appropriate ranges of this variability. So the use of statistical tools in this stage is very important, using, for example, design of experiment to define the design space and what are the most appropriate normal operating ranges. Those will be used during commercial production. It will define the critical process parameters. And finally, this stage will end with the initial control strategy establishment that summarize all the arrangement and controls. Those will be implemented during commercial manufacture. Next stage is the process qualification. And this involves to assess and evaluate this variation, and build confidence on these set controls. It is divided into two stages. Stage 2A, where premises, utilities, equipment, and different systems are qualified. So we verify that all the systems that will contribute to the process is qualified and perform as intended. Followed by stage 2B, that determine process performance qualification, or what we call the PPQ batches. In this stage, we demonstrate the process capability within the commercial scale batches, within the normal operating condition. We verify that critical process parameters with the established ranges are appropriate and that the process performance is appropriate. We calculate and demonstrate the process capability, and based on all the data gathered and the successful results, we can give the sensitive decision about commercial distribution. If we have successful process qualification step, then we can start commercial distribution with complete vigilance and complete monitoring of the commercial production in the continued process verification phase. This phase is enhanced control strategy, where we update the control strategy based on the increased knowledge gained from the previous stages. And we can perform further capability assessment based on the long term, the massive amount of data that will be collected, the importance of the continued process verification, that it gives us an understanding and knowledge about the batch-to-batch variability, which is not quietly understood in the previous batch stages due to the limited number of batches. We can implement statistical process control to ensure that the process is maintained in a state of control, and we can obtain signals or trend that trigger continuous improvement of the process. And of course, it's combined with a continuous product supply. It's worth mentioning that it is not a one-way process. After we reach continued process verification, we may go back to the process qualification or process design induced by changes. So, for example, during continued process verification, we may see abnormal trends. So we need to go to the process design to change the design space, to change critical process parameter operating ranges, or we may go to the process qualification. Tech transfer is another example. So maybe in a very well-established process, in continued process verification, technology transfer will take place at change that may trigger to repeat process validation if there is similarity between the sending unit and receiving unit, or may we go back to the process design if there are major differences between both facilities. So it's an ongoing process and not a one-way. During all the stages, there is a knowledge management. Starts from the pre-qualification, from the pre-development stage, by collecting all the information relevant to the history, similar products from subject matter experts, and the knowledge attained through development and research, the knowledge attained through process capability study in the process performance qualification batches, and knowledge attained from continuous process verification. So knowledge management is continuous, and also risk management is applied in the different stages of process validation. Designing every stage is greatly linked with the quality risk management principles. So in the first stage, we need to ensure that lack of proper understanding will not encounter a risk to the process. For example, in process qualification step, there is a major risk due to sampling uncertainty. Unless we have a proper understanding of the process, sampling may give a false indication. And even in continuous process verification, there is a risk of changing the behavior of the process or the management system. So quality risk management principles should be applied all over the process validation stages. And all over the process validation stages, we should collect data and use statistical analysis to have an inference on the population and in the units that we do not test. So as we mentioned on stage 1, which is the process design, the main goal is building and capturing process knowledge. So in this phase, we go for representative modules for laboratory trials, for simulations, to understand the variation and its impact on the critical quality attributes. And we study the different factors and their impact by factorial analysis. One of the best fit statistical tool for this is the design of experiment, but for sure we can use other studies to identify multivariate interactions. And here also, it's very important to implement risk assessment for every process steps using different quality risk management tool so that you can identify the risk step, the risky activity, and propose controls to minimize that risk. A very important point is understanding variation contributed either by the raw materials, environment, employee, or others. And these variation should consider the impact on both the intra or inter variation. So it should consider whether this variation will impact consistency between batch to batch or between unit to unit within the same batch. And the main deliverable of this stage is establishing an initial control strategy. And this control strategy is used to reduce or adjust the variation, to establish document process control procedures, and to consider implementation of process analytical technology. So in this control strategy, you should define every parameter, critical parameter, whether for the process or critical material attribute, what are the allowable ranges and what testing method will be implemented. Maybe it is a very critical process parameter that needs continuous vigilance during production. So at this, we will go for analytics like process analytical technology using inline testing, having a probe inside your manufacturing line that continuously measure and give you real-time data about the performance of the critical process parameter. Or you may need an offline testing because the variation is not as frequent. So understanding your variation is a foundation for proposing what is the measurement system and what analytics will be performed during subsequent stages. Going back to the same slide, so we have the process, and we identify the sources of variation, and we identified the different critical parameters. So the summary and the planned set of controls derived from the current product and process understanding that assure process performance and product quality is the control strategy that includes the critical material attributes, the critical process parameters, and link them with the critical quality attributes. And all should be, this criticality should be assessed in terms of the patient safety.